Hey geeks, welcome back. So, as a follow-up to my last video about DC Animated Universe, I wanted to share some more thoughts about that project. If you haven't seen that video, just quick recap. I watched all of the DC Animated Universe television shows, with the exception of Static Shock and Project Zeta, which were short-lived and didn't really meld too much in the continuity of the primary shows that the DCAU is known for. In Justice League Unlimited, one of the things I liked about that show a lot was that they brought in so many characters from DC Comics. I wasn't expecting like the roster of characters that they had. As I sit here talking about DC drinking out of my Iron Man coffee mug. What can I say? I love both of them. Anyway, so yeah, the characters, the character roster was great. So from the Justice League animated show, they brought back the primary superheroes, which were Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, Flash, and Hawk Girl, also known as Shayera. So they brought them back. And at the end of Justice League, it was found that Hawk Girl was actually kind of a traitor to the Earth. She was a double agent working for the Hawk World planet. And the Hawk people, Hawkman and his ilk, came to invade Earth. And she later recanted that because she didn't know that, she thought that they were just going to do like an invasion and sort of just rule over the Earth, but I think they had some genocidal plans, you know, as invaders frequently do. And so she kind of betrayed them, but she had to earn back the trust of the Justice League, and that's a subplot in Justice League Unlimited, which is pretty cool. There was also a romance between Green Lantern, John Stewart, and Hawk Girl, and that got interrupted because of the betrayal of the planet, and then that carries on into Justice League Unlimited, and there's kind of this love triangle between him and Hawk Girl and another hero. She's not very well known. What is her name? It escapes me. I'm trying to look through the show notes. Was it Vic? No, it's not Vixen. She kind of looks like Tigra. She can change into like a leopard and so forth. So anyway, it has been predicted that in the future, the near future, that John Stewart and Hawk Girl will actually, I think, be married and have a child. There's a time travel episode where somebody tells him that, but then he comes back to the present and he's like, well, we're not even like together anymore. Like we're not dating, you know? So, and you're hoping that will get like resolved in the show, but unfortunately it didn't because of, you know, it's like after 3 seasons they canceled it. However, they did continue on in the comic book, so maybe that's addressed in the comics. I haven't read the comics associated with the Justice League Animated Universe or DC Animated Universe. I have some of them, and so yeah, I'm going to check those out at some point. So I felt like they had set up some pretty decent storylines and subplots in Justice League Unlimited. One of the others was, you know, Bruce Wayne continuing to be the player that he is. While it's never explicitly stated, it's clear there's a lot of allusions to Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, having some kind of a relationship with Wonder Woman, some kind of a romantic relationship. So they drop major hints on that, especially in the final season. So, you know, Bruce gets around in the animated universe. Okay, so the roster of other superheroes that they bring in to this show is insane. It's almost too much. You got Supergirl, Green Arrow, my favorite, The Question. And lo and behold, like, The Question has a very prominent role in this show. Now, I've got The Question Omnibus. Look how huge this book is. Volume 1. It's an omnibus, so it's a brick of a book. And if you're not familiar with The Question, so The Question was created in Charlton Comics by Steve Ditko. And Steve Ditko wanted to create a character who was sort of not as stringent as another Ditko character known as Mr. A. And Mr. A was I guess you could say he was a reflection of Ditko's philosophical values. Yeah. And so that meant that he was a very hardcore objectivist. So if you think about the Ayn Rand objectivism philosophy, Mr. A was very in tune with that, as was Ditko in his real life. And working at Charlton, the page rates that they paid artists was like rock bottom. But the payoff is that you had your creative freedom, and you didn't have that at Marvel and DC. Marvel and DC pretty much told you what you could and couldn't do. They paid you a little bit better, but that was the trade-off, and Ditko wasn't down with that. Ditko's like, I'd rather be working poor and have my creative freedom than be told what to do by Stan Lee when I'm drawing some, Doctor Strange or Spider-Man. So he was out of there. That's why he didn't stay very long at Marvel. I mean, sure, yeah, they probably brought him back here and there to do one-off stories and so forth, and so did DC, so, I mean, he's got a lot of material from DC and Marvel. But Ditko cranked out a lot for Charlton because that's where he could find his creative freedom. He could do what he wanted to do. He could create the characters that he wanted to create and tell the stories that he wanted to tell. And so The Question was kind of a variation of Mr. A. I would say like maybe a little bit of a softer version of Mr. A. Mr. A was like hardcore, like very extreme. And The Question is not. But the question is in the JLU series, he's like a major conspiracy theorist. Like they go into his room and he's got the yarn with the thumbtacks and all that stuff, But he's essentially a super detective. He's mortal, so he's not he doesn't have superpowers. He's just extremely intelligent, super detective, pattern recognition extraordinaire, skilled in brawling and martial arts, of course, so he can fight. Always has the trench coat, and he wears a mask. There he is accosting someone in their pajamas. He has a maskless face. And who else do we know has a face like that? Rorschach. So The Question and Mr. A were a genesis into Rorschach. When Alan Moore wrote Rorschach in the Watchmen comic book, that's who he was riffing on, was Mr. A and The Question. So, and that's not like him ripping them off or anything. That was Moore's intent. When he wrote Watchmen, all of the superhero characters in Watchmen are variations of previous characters, mostly from Charlton Comics. So The Question now is with DC because DC bought Charlton Comics, I think in the mid-'80s. And they invented one of the many crises, story arcs. I think it was Crisis on Infinite Earths, and that's how they explained bringing in the Charlton characters into the proper DC universe. So The Question was a part of that. Blue Beetle was the other one. Blue Beetle started as a Charlton, superhero. I have an issue of Charlton Bullseye from the '80s that has the Blue Beetle in it and the Question. And I believe it's the issue where the Question's debut, I think, at least for Charlton. If I'm correct on that, I'll have to look it up. So that's a coveted issue. I bought that comic book at Magic Market. And they're both superheroes are on the cover, and it's like one of these split covers, and Blue Beetle's on top, and he's like, I don't know, flying out of his beetle ship, you know. And the other is like, the Question is like punching someone out, and it says, "Who is the Question?" And I'm like, well, that's the Question. But who is the Question? Well, that's the Question. No, that is the Question. So anyway, DC did a huge run, and Dennis O'Neil, who's been known to spin a good yarn, you know, wrote it. He's popped in and out of various comic books, but he had his own title for a while. Let's dig into the synopsis there. So as you can see, he'll find the answers or die trying. In the late 1980s, 2 decades after the Question was first introduced, writer Denny O'Neil and artist Dennis Cowan reimagined the character for a new era. The plot remained much the same. Gritty investigative journalist Vic Sage still fights injustice as an anonymous, faceless vigilante. But much like other seminal comic runs of that period, the Question went far above its simple noir adventure premise. As Vic Sage contemplated his role in the corrupt hub city and interrogated his own motivations for becoming a crime fighter, O'Neil and Cowan dove into vital questions of philosophy, criminology, and the inherent brutality in heroism. I love this character. Can't wait to dig into that omnibus. So in the Justice League Unlimited show, he gets a lot of screen time, to the point where he actually has a romance with Black Canary. And Black Canary is voiced in the show by Morena Baccarin, who you may know from the Deadpool movies and Gotham. I actually saw her in a panel at Dragon Con with her husband, that dude from also from Gotham. That's where they met, was on the set of Gotham. And but he was in the OC. I forget his name, but he's cool. They're both really down to earth people. I like them. I enjoy their work quite a bit. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention how beautiful Morena Baccarin is. Probably one of the most beautiful women in the world. Just saying. So anyway, we have the Question. Who else is in that show? Huntress. She also plays a big role in that show. And Huntress is another one of those characters, kind of obscure. You know, not like an A-lister in DC, but gets a lot of screen time in the Justice League Unlimited show. So that was cool to see. Dr. Fate, who is just another fantastic character. Old school, you know, Dr. Fate, Justice Society of America. Pierce Brosnan plays him in the Black Adam movie, which was like perfect casting. Too bad they killed him off. He would have definitely made for an excellent Dr. Fate in his own movie or appearing in other movies. But who knows? Maybe he will. I mean, he's Dr. Fate, so if there's any character that can come back to life, it's him. But yeah, Dr. Fate actually has a big role in the DC animated universe. He shows up in Superman, the animated series. He shows up in both of the Justice League shows. Possibly in the latter, maybe in a latter episode of Batman. Any Dr. Fate appearances are well appreciated by me. A Dr. Fate omnibus, I'm sure it exists, is something that's on my radar. I'd like to read all of the Dr. Fate that I can get my hands on. Aquaman, Black Canary, as I mentioned, Lois Lane, Big Barda. So, you know, I mentioned her on the last video. Warhawk, who starts out as Bwana Beast. No, he plays same voice actor, Peter Onorati. So yeah, Warhawk and Big Barda make their way into the later incarnation, the future Justice League Infinite or Infinity or whatever it is, that pop up in like the 3rd season of Batman Beyond. Mr. Terrific, he's an interesting character. He apparently, Mr. Terrific is like I wasn't familiar with his character, which again is why this JLU show was so awesome. Or I vaguely recollect him from the 80s, but he apparently is like a whiz with technology. I think that's his superpower. Stargirl, Captain Atom in Shining Knight, Elongated Man, voiced by Jeremy Piven, Vixen, Booster Gold. So Booster Gold, who's about to get a big boost from James Gunn in the new DC film universe. I totally forgot about Booster Gold, but he was very popular in the late 80s, had his own book. I almost completely forgot about him. Mr. Miracle shows up. Now, he's married to Big Barda, Mr. Miracle of Apocalypse, one of the sons of Darkseid. Zatanna, Vigilante, Hawkman, Orion, voiced by Ron Perlman, Hellboy himself. Speedy, King Faraday, Captain Marvel, or Billy Batson as he's known, in his human form. Long Shadow, Wildcat, voiced by Dennis Farina, which is perfect. That's perfect voice casting. So Wildcat is one of my favorites because he has probably the worst costume in superherodom, especially the early iterations of him. And we'll have to look at some of him in sort of those all-star comic collections I have, because he's an early member of the JSA. And the thing about him that always makes me smile is he dresses like a wildcat. So he's got like this black, skin-tight suit. I think he's got some like clawed gloves. But the mask he wears, it's like a cat's face, but it's got like the big kind of like cat jowls with the whiskers. And then he's got these floppy ears. They almost look like bunny ears. And it's just like, who designed that? And that look kind of sticks with him. I think there's been various artists have tinkered with it over the years and made it look better eventually, but the early iterations of him, now he looks, from what I recall, he looks fine in the show. I think they slimmed down the facial features a little bit, and I think that so it just kind of hangs over his eyes and you can see, kind of like the Batman mask. But the early iterations, like, they literally tried to make the mask look like he was, he had the cheeks of a cat with the whiskers. And he's mortal. He has no superpowers. He's an ex-heavyweight boxing champion. So he'll just, he'll just beat you. He'll just pound you. He's a street brawler. And, he likes to hang out with Batman a lot. In fact, there is a book out there of Batman / Wildcat that I came across somewhere. I can't remember, but in the past year. And I was an idiot not to grab that book. I should have. But anyway, yeah, Wildcat is in it, and he also plays a pretty big role in the show. He gets a lot of screen time. So, and Dennis Farina, I mean, you've seen him in so many gangster movies, and so he's got that sort of, Bowery accent from New York City, type thing going on. Let's see who else. Warlord from the comics, obviously. Warlord, Mike Grell's Warlord. He makes an appearance in 1 or 2 episodes. Powwow Smith, Deadman. Deadman's always an interesting character. Dove, Hawk, so Hawk and Dove. Fire, Hippolyta from Themyscira, from Wonder Woman's Island. El Diablo, Batlash, Brainiac 5. So Brainiac 5 being kind of a son of Brainiac who lives in the future. He's part of Legion of Superheroes. So yeah, there is an episode where they go into the future and they meet the Legion of Superheroes. Metron, one of my all-time favorites from the New Gods. Oberon, also from the New Gods. So yeah, and the voice acting lineup that they have, there's people like Ed Asner, Malcolm McDowell, who else? Clancy Brown is Lex Luthor. Perfect voice casting. CCH Pounder is Amanda Waller. Again, dead on casting. J.K. Simmons is General Wade Elling or Mantis. Michael Dorn, Worf from Star Trek Next Generation, is Calabac. You know, Michael Ironside is Darkseid. I mean, that's another reason why DCAU. Oh, and of course the immortal Mark Hamill does more than just the Joker. He also does Trickster. You know, the villain lineup is just insane. Clock King, Amazo, Captain Boomerang, Morgan Le Fay. She's in like 3 episodes. Toyman, Metallo, Mercy Graves, Felix Faust, Sinestro, Kronos, Shadow Thief, Cheetah, Doomsday, Cersei, Roulette, Half Set, Chucko, Dee Dee. Melissa Joan Hart always does the Dee Dees. Ghoul, Hades, Devil Ray. It goes on. I mean, it's amazing how many villains and heroes they cram into this show, and it all works. It all works. So that was very cool. I love the fact that they are able to fit in so many villains and heroes, many of them obscure in the DC world, into that show. Whereas in the Justice League, you know, it was just that core group of superheroes, you know, the big names, and you know, Darkseid shows up in both shows, you know, so there's just this ongoing. It's really Darkseid and the New Gods and Apocalypse and New Genesis. You know, that whole Jack Kirby Fourth World is a big part of the Superman and Justice League shows in the DC animated universe. It's kind of almost one of the main axes of a lot of the storytelling, you know, which was caught me by surprise. Like, I didn't know that there was so much of that woven into those 3 shows. You know, it was cool to see, because it means very early on in sort of DC upping their game on television and later on in the movies, you know, that they were willing to put Darkseid out there front and center as their main bad guy, you know, because he is their Thanos in the Marvel universe. And in fact, Darkseid preceded Thanos. Thanos wasn't invented until after Darkseid was invented. And it's a well-known story that, you know, Marvel Comics, I don't know if it was Stan Lee or some other editor, went to Jim Starlin and said, we need a Thanos, or we need a Darkseid. We need a Darkseid, because Kirby's over at DC now, and he's got this, you know, villain he's created, and, you know, DC's going to make him like the main dude, the main, you know, antagonist in the entire DC universe, and we need a guy like that. I mean, we've already got Galactus, yeah, but they're more of a Fantastic Four thing, and, you know, we need somebody new, somebody fresh, you know. So Starlin, you know, took like a tab of acid or something and dreamt up Thanos. You know, Starlin went and did what Starlin does, and of course he wrote magnificent stories about Thanos and Warlord, and of course the Infinity Gauntlet saga, which served as the big inspiration for the Marvel movies, especially Infinity War and Endgame, but really the entire, you know, first iteration of the Marvel movies, you know, up till Endgame, revolved around that concept of Thanos, you know, being behind the scenes, pulling all the strings. Well, Jim Starlin, who I've met briefly, and thanked him for his contribution to the art of comic writing and illustration, and he was a very pleasant person to meet. But yeah, that served as a center axis in the Marvel universe, not just in the comics, but also, of course, in the movies. Now they've moved on to Kang. So, what else? Let's talk about... yes. Let me throw this in as a bonus. So I'm trying to keep this video under 30 minutes. So I started watching the latest Batman animated film, like brand new. I think it just came out like a month ago or something. The Batman, the Doom that came to Gotham. So the Doom that came to Gotham is not part of the DC animated universe. This is a more of an Elseworlds concept. Elseworlds is like, it's like the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix. You know, it's a different dimension where the heroes can take vastly different forms, and the stories. It just gives the story writers, you know, a bigger, broader palette to play with to fit these characters into, you know, reimagine them, to fit them into different, you know, into a different type of template, I guess. And so in this film, Bruce Wayne is on a ship. It's like the edge of the century. It's like 1901, you know, so it's like just on the verge of the 20th century. So there's a little bit of steampunk aesthetic to it, you know. So they're on a ship, and he's got Dick Grayson with him, and a guy named Raj who dies quickly, so he's kind of a throwaway character, and a young girl, I forget her name, Tyndall or something like that. I'm not really sure what they're going to do with her character. I didn't finish watching all of the movie, but I will. But anyways, the gist of it is it marries the Batman, sort of a steampunk Batman aesthetic, with the HP Lovecraft Cthulhu mythos. So that's an interesting concept, and it kind of fits into, you know, something that Batman, you know, would be involved in, because when you look at the other iterations of Batman that are outside of kind of the normal canon, you know, if you look at Gotham by Gaslight, which is more of a Jack the Ripper versus Batman type of story, you know, it makes sense now to kind of bring the Cthulhu mythos. And, you know, most of the Cthulhu stuff was written by H.P. Lovecraft. Was it late 1800s, early 1900s? So, you know, it just kind of makes sense for that time period to get mashed into Batman, into a Gotham that is there at the turn of the century. And it feels weird saying turn of the century, because it's not even our century anymore. Turn of the 20th century. Oh, that century, not the century we're in now. This is the 21st century. Where'd the time go, man? You can see I've been here for both centuries, man. Probably be here for the next one too. So so yeah, it was pretty cool to see it, though. No determination on if I like the movie or not that much. I don't know. We'll see here. Green Arrow is in it. There's a version of Green Arrow, Oliver. He's in it. And basically he returns to Gotham because he got wind of the possibility that there's some impending apocalypse that's about to descend on the city, and only he can save it. And I guess where it picks up is like he's been traveling around the world in this ship with his ward, Dick Grayson, and they've been learning all of the stuff, all the skills they need to become Batman and Robin, you know. And so that's what he does. He returns to Gotham, and, you know, Alfred's like on the ship with them and stuff. So he basically relocates on this ship, and he's sailing around the world doing all this stuff. So he breaks out the Batman suit, and he starts trying to solve the mystery. And he runs into Ra's al Ghul, and of course Talia, his daughter. They play a big part of it. There's a version of Mr. Freeze in it. There is, you know, there is a Cthulhu type monster behind the scenes. It's kind of pulling all the strings, and there are also various other monsters that he has to fight. It's kind of a dark and brooding, you know, film, very foreboding, which is, you know, I guess what you would want to go for when you mix Batman with Cthulhu mythos. But I don't know. I'm not entirely sure if it's going to work for me. I don't know. I'll watch the ending, the last 26 minutes of it, and I'll make a determination. But it's not horrible. I just felt like maybe it lagged in certain spots up to this point. But again, I haven't finished it, so it's too early for me to make a pronouncement on if I like it or not. I mean, I'm going to like it to a certain level because it's a Batman thing, so it's not going to be like, I'm not going to say it sucked, it was horrible, you know. there's a certain baseline of likability that it's going to accomplish because it's a Batman, you know. So, yeah, there's that, and I think that's all for now. I do have some thoughts about Batman Beyond and Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker, the film. So I'll probably make another video on those once those coalesce in my head, because I really liked that show. I really thought it was great. And I'd like to see a lot more of Batman Beyond. I'd like to see Batman Beyond make his way into the films, into a live action film. I don't know if that's on James Gunn's plate or not, but we'll see. But, you know, really the future of superhero movies at this point, I think is really up in the air. There's clearly, I would say, a boycott going on, you know, with both Marvel and DC. Personally, I'm going to go see Aquaman 2 because I liked the first one and it created enough goodwill with me to go see the second one, although I've heard it's going to suck. But these days, you just never know. The pre-buzz around films it's shaped by so many different forces that have their own agendas that have almost nothing to do with the movies. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. So, I'd hate to see Aquaman 2 get the Han Solo treatment. I'd hate to see it get soloed, which I've mentioned that term before, where it kind of becomes a victim of the fallout of other things, of other sins that have been cast by the studios. So I'm going to go check it out. It's going to be in 3D too. I might see it in 3D, and you know, it should be a fun movie. But yeah, a Batman Beyond live action film. James Gunn, make that happen. You know, I have this much pull, teeny weeny amount of pull with James Gunn. So if you're watching, James, make it happen. It would make for an excellent live action film, in my opinion. Just saying. Anyway, that's it for now. All you got to do is just stay geek.